All public presentments may be accepted and returned for discharge. All of them, without exception. And I can tell you this from firsthand experience. In fact, I'm going to share with you later in this video, if you stick with me, I'm going to share with you a recent win I had where I was able to discharge a public obligation. Not a huge one. It was just over $1,000, but still a win. And so I'm going to share that with you, but you got to stick with me through this video. Now, it's not going to be a very long video, so you won't have to make a huge time commitment, but I promise you it's going to be worth it. So first of all, if you're brand new here, I want to welcome you. I'm David Greenberg, and I'm the founder and managing director of the Freedom Studio. We're a private education organization, and we're focused on helping you be great. And our curriculum at the Freedom Studio consists of three things. We teach natural law, equity, and private trust. Specialization is very important. You can't be all things to all people, but you can have your hair flying all over the place, as I apparently am now. Sorry about that. A little bit of a hair malfunction. So you can't be all things to all people. That's why we at the Freedom Studio tend to focus on those three areas. And if someone else wants to bring expertise forth in another area, well, that's great. That may be complementary to what we teach. But I would argue that if you learn natural law, if you become a regular student of natural law, equity, and private trusts, that's probably going to cover the vast majority of the different scenarios that could come up in your life. So it could be worth it. If you're brand new here, I want to welcome you, especially if this is the first time. Of course, also super shout out to all of our current subscribers and folks who have been following us, including our members and others. It's great to have you here. So on this video, I just want to briefly remind you that any public presentment that you receive, any presentment regarding a public obligation, may be accepted and returned in order to perform on that obligation, in order to pay that obligation, which could be a debt, could be evidence of a debt, or it could be some other public obligation. Okay? So what's a presentment? A presentment is the act of someone issuing usually a document or some instrument that basically states that you owe an obligation. You have a debt to pay. You must perform in some way based on an existing contract. And remember, it's all based on contracts. Everything that's happening in the public is a contract, or it's based on some presumption of an existing contract. Okay? That's why it's all voluntary, because you opt into that system, and if you're ceding any rights, it's just because you're doing it voluntarily in exchange for some benefit or some privilege. Okay? However, because there is no money in the public system, it's all negotiable instruments, you have, in addition to the liability of responding and performing on your obligations, you also have a superpower. And that is that you can accept and return it, and your acceptance itself constitutes a payment. So what are the public presentments that I'm referring to? Well, taxes is probably the first example. Any tax bill or any statement that says you owe taxes is a presentment. It's a public presentment, it's a public debt or obligation, and therefore it may be accepted and returned. So taxes, definitely yes. And that includes personal tax liabilities. It also includes corporate tax liabilities, as well as trust taxes. Okay, so really any types of taxes that you can imagine. It also includes things like property taxes. Okay, so taxes is the first type. Unsecured debt is probably the next big category. So student loans, personal loans, business loans, and so forth. This is the next level. These are all unsecured debts. Okay, it's only backed by your standing as the creditor. I've talked about this on many videos, so you may want to go back and watch some of my previous videos to see how it is that you are actually the creditor and not the debtor. That may be surprising to you. Okay. Then we have secured loans. So these are things like mortgages and car loans, or loans that have some kind of security backing. Okay. And then we have everything coming from the courts. That's a big category. So court summons, lawsuits, claims, and so forth. Anything at all coming from the court, even arrest warrants, even criminal charges. These are all public presentments, and they may be discharged. Okay. They can be discharged administratively. However, if you're dealing with the court, there's also a good chance that you may actually need to discharge it in the court. I'll talk a little bit about how you can learn how to do that. Okay, we've had some great success stories in our network, folks who have been able to discharge civil and criminal court cases through acceptance. Here's another example. Recently, I started working with some corporate clients, and in addition to the taxes, in addition to court issues, now you have these governmental regulators. It could be the county. It could be, I've even heard of things like the Office of, get this, the Office of Workforce Development. I won't mention the specific city or region, but just imagine an Office of Workforce Development, okay? Sending you a notice that you must do this or that or the other. The county telling you that you may or may not do something on your property, and so forth. So these are all examples of presentments. So they can all be handled in the same way. There's no need to introduce any controversy. There's no need to argue or fight or make any counterclaims or file a lawsuit. Yes, many people will do those things, and some people will actually prefer, for whatever reason, to want to do those things. And you always got a personal choice, right? Everybody has free will. So you're going to always find many different avenues that people are going to take. But what I'm telling you is none of that is necessary when you know that you can simply accept the obligation and return it for settlement and closure of that account. Okay, what has also been called discharge. All right? I've seen people struggle with this. Every time something new comes along, it's almost like they want to treat it like it's a new issue, like it's something that has to be handled in some new way. We can't really apply what we've already learned. But I'm telling you, from both firsthand experience, also observing others, they're all handled the same way. Okay, and that's actually really good news. That's good news because it creates a certain level of simplicity and even, I would say, elegance with respect to how you can handle these things. Because now you can take the same approach with everything. And not only that, but you can take an approach that's not controversial, that's not combative, that's not argumentative. It's very honorable, right? You are honoring the commitment. You're honoring it by paying it. You're paying it through performance. In this case, it's called acceptance. Your acceptance is your performance on the contract, okay? And that's what's paying the debt. And the reason that they get paid is because your acceptance, your signature, has value in a system that does not use money but uses negotiable instruments instead, right? It's your signature that is creating the value, and it is your signature that allows the receiving party to get paid. Okay, so everybody's getting paid, right? So you can comfortably send those acceptances in the mail knowing that they're going to get paid. The only difference is you didn't have to pay them by sending them your hard-earned funds, right? You didn't have to pay them by writing a check out of your own bank account. Instead, you created the funds through your signature, okay? Backed by the securitization of, in the origin, usually your birth certificate, the certificate of live birth, which was securitized. I've talked about that as well. And because of that standing, your signature is recognized as infusing what's called commercial value into that document. Okay, so when you accept and return it in the proper way, and you give notice of what you're doing, so you basically explain what you're doing, then that document now essentially becomes, the signed document or the signed presentment now becomes a negotiable instrument. okay? And you don't have to worry or care how they're going to actually process it on the back end. You just need to know that they can get paid, okay? And this is true for all the different types of presentments that I've explained to you, that I've shared with you in the examples. All those types of presentments that I just mentioned, taxes, unsecured debts, secured debts, revolving lines of credit, anything coming from the court, anything coming from a public entity that makes a claim that you must do this or that or the other, or you must comply with this or that or the other statutes, they're all presentments. They're all evidences of public obligation, and therefore they all fall under that same category that they may be accepted and returned, okay? I hammer on this point a lot because we're drawing a real strong distinction here between this approach, which is largely based on equity and honor, versus other approaches that, again, may be a little more controversial, that may require you to actually file something in the courts, such as a lawsuit or a countersuit. And we don't want to do that. The court already, the purpose of the court is to eliminate controversy. Why would we want to add more controversy to the court? How is that going to help us? Okay. Sometimes in my videos, because I use the word sovereign, below my videos, sometimes you'll see that little, YouTube likes to put that little thing up that says, the sovereign citizen is a da-da-da-da-da. You've probably seen that, having not such nice things to say about sovereign citizen. Well, I actually agree with that. I don't want you to be a sovereign citizen, and there's no reason why you should be. First of all, a sovereign citizen is an oxymoron, because a sovereign is a free being who's above rule. Sovereign, super regnum, above rule, sovereign. And citizen basically means a servant or a slave. So how could you be a slave or a servant who is above rule? It just makes no sense at all. But the other reason I kind of smile when I see that term is I've watched a lot of these videos on YouTube and elsewhere where they say, sovereign citizen shows up in court. And when you watch those videos, when I watch those videos, I cringe. And the main reason I watch them is because it gives me ideas about how to role play as the judge to help people practice bringing equity. And it's a great example of how not to be. And it also encourages me because when you bring equity to the court, you're acting nothing like any of those people in any of those so-called sovereign citizen videos. And that's what I'm telling you. When you bring equity, you eliminate all the controversy. It's a much higher level. Okay, this is really high level stuff. Because when it boils down to it, you're just doing banking. You're doing banking into the public from the private. Okay, you are private, and you're using your private standing to discharge something that's coming to you from the public. It's all banking. Okay, we're just balancing the books. So that's what makes it so powerful. It's poorly understood. I didn't know any of this, a year ago, and certainly 2, 3, 4 years ago and beyond. I had no idea. I figured the only way to deal with government and public obligations was to either just acquiesce, just, give into it, all of it, or maybe on the other extreme to fight it. Okay, and even that I kind of realized intuitively that wasn't going to work, because fighting a system, how can you do that? It's like trying to fight fire with fire. So I kind of knew that was never going to be a win, but I didn't really have an alternate way of looking at it because no one had ever taught me equity. No one had ever taught me that there's another way to look at all this, that actually there's another level to this game that it's not being taught anywhere. It's not being taught in any of the public institutions of learning, and it probably never will be, to be honest with you. It's probably never will be taught in the public, but it is now being taught in the private. I was very fortunate to come across some private mentors and educators who taught me, and now I'm basically passing that along to you. So on this very public video, I'm not going to teach you the insides and outs of it. This video is more just to whet your appetite. This video is more to get you to realize that there is a deeper game and you can learn it. And the beautiful thing about it is it's simple, it's elegant, it's non-controversial, and it works. Okay, so you heard me say it works a couple of times, and you're like, David, show me the proof. Everybody's like, show me the proof, show me the proof. All right, well, let me show you one example from my own scenario, and then I'll invite you to join our community so you can hear about all the other great examples of other people who've been able to discharge um, from their own firsthand testimony. So in my case, again, it's not a huge example, but it is a win. I had contracted for a business service. This is about a year ago. And I was actually doing it in the capacity of a trustee, which makes it a little more interesting. But it may as well have just been as a business owner. It's kind of equivalent from that perspective. So I contracted a business service, and then I realized that I wasn't going to be able to use that service. So shortly after contracting it, I contacted the company and said, actually, I'm not going to be able to continue with this service. Well, as it turns out, the company was very heavy-handed about it, and they basically wrote me back and said, sorry, you agreed to a year contract, you're going to have to pay for the entire year one way or another. And that just worked out to just over $1,000 worth of services. So not huge, but obviously not pocket change. So at the time that this happened, I had already been studying equity for a few months, but I didn't have a lot of experience with using equity to accept and return these presentments. So I said to myself, David, here's the perfect, like, quote unquote, low risk scenario to give this a try. So I started bringing equity through the administrative process. So administrative in this case means basically through paperwork, so not in the courts. The only thing that slowed me down was I ended up going to Colombia, as some of you guys know, in South America, where I was for about 6 months. And that really slowed me down in terms of my administrative process, because some of these things you really can't do easily if you don't have direct access to the local mail service, in this case in the US, but depending on which country you're in. So that slowed me down tremendously. But when I got back from Colombia in May, I really hit the ground running. And so for a while, I was just accepting and returning these presentments, and really it wasn't helping. They just kept sending me the notices, and they were tacking on their late fees and whatnot, but not really sending me anything threatening. It was just they were just doing their process and I was doing my process. So I said, I remember that famous maxim that I've talked about on other videos, the commercial maxim of ancient commercial law: he who leaves the battlefield first loses by default. And I basically made a decision. I decided, okay, this is probably taking longer than it needs to. However, I'm never going to back down. I'm going to be very polite, very respectful. I'm going to accept everything. I'm going to follow the process, but I ain't backing down. I'm not a quitter. And that turned out to be a very smart decision on my part. Why? Because I persisted and I persisted. And then I think it was about a month or two ago, I finally got a very curious email from this same corporation. And in the email, I noticed that they sent me a bunch of PDFs, and they were all basically credit notes. They were credit notes that were reversing charges on the account, which had the effect of lowering the balance. Okay. And I thought it was very curious. But the other thing that I thought was curious was that they only ended up reversing about 80% of the total balance. So there was still this small amount left. And they didn't send me any kind of explanation either why they were doing, why 80%. I mean, I just honestly didn't know. But I still took it as a partial win. And so what I did is say, okay, well, if I was able to discharge or set off 80% of it, what's going to stop me from setting off the remaining 20%? So I kind of just doubled down on accepting, returning the presentments they continued to send me, and I just kept accepting and returning. Lo and behold, a few weeks later, I think it was like last week or the week before, I get another couple of emails from the corporation. The first was another email with a bunch of credit notes, basically reversing the balance, except this time, apparently they reversed everything. And then shortly thereafter, I got a nice little email, and I'll probably post the screenshot for you guys here so you can actually read it for yourself. And the gist of it basically is, dear David, thank you for accepting our decision. It's kind of interesting how they phrase that. They did use the word acceptance, but just in a different context. Oh, and by the way, you don't owe us anything. We've zeroed out your balance. We're taking the account off of our collections list, and we're closing the account, and you owe nothing. And we're canceling the contract. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Complete discharge. And the only thing I did was I strictly adhered to the process that I had learned, the administrative process of how to discharge an equity through what has been called a banker's acceptance. It's a very simple, very uncomplicated process that we teach as part of our private equity mentorship. Or for some students who work with me one-on-one, I can also teach that to you privately one-on-one. So there's a couple of different options. We do not teach that publicly. We do not teach that publicly because it would be like walking down the street and with a loaded gun and saying, here's a loaded gun for you to defend yourself. Go have some fun. So that's never going to happen. So if you want to learn it, you got to learn it privately. Okay, but it is possible, and we have a growing community of more than 200 students who are bringing equity and having tremendous success. And some of their successes are much more amazing than even the one I just shared with you. We had one woman in network who was able to discharge more than 40 years of a criminal sentence down to probation, and then she was able to discharge it down to practically nothing. And if that doesn't catch your attention, then hey, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe this isn't for you. Maybe this is not something you should look into. If that doesn't catch your fancy, or at least make you want to look into it, at least provoke your curiosity. So I'm telling you, this stuff works. Equity is the real deal, but you have to kind of embody it. You have to be the embodiment of equity, which means you have to really look at things from a higher level. You can't be in that, I'm fighting the system kind of mindset. That's not really going to work. Okay, it's very high-minded. That makes it a little challenging. That creates a barrier of entry for people who are used to fighting the system or thinking they have to fight the system. But I'm telling you, that's not really necessary. Again, if you want to take that route, everybody has free will. Personally, I don't recommend it. My perspective is my time is limited, and I want to be using my time judiciously. I don't want to be, spending my time creating a bunch of controversy. I want to do the opposite. I want to eliminate all the controversy. Okay. Now I have a feeling that I'm going to be sharing some even bigger wins, not just for myself, but both for me, but also for some of our other students, some of my mentees, because some of them have been taking big action. Some of them have been preparing to go to court. So some of that's still pending. I can't really let the cat out of the bag until the cat is out of the bag, but I have a feeling I'm going to be sharing some even bigger wins. But hopefully what I've shared with you on this video is enough to really pique your interest and hopefully invite you to take a closer look. Okay, so a good starting point if you're brand new, again, even if you've been following me but you haven't really taken action, you're going to want to take some action. So what are some great things to do? Come to our next free live workshop. I'm not sure when this video is going to be posted, but we do workshops about once a month or so, once every 4 to 5 weeks. So as of this recording, the next one is on Sunday, September 21st. Workshops are always free, and we're really going to take it to the next level. Gotten some great feedback on those workshops. So if you can attend, it's definitely going to be worth it. You also want to join our groups. We have communities on Telegram and Facebook now. So feel free to jump in and join the conversation. And then if you want to take it to even the next level, we have 3 levels of membership, just depending on what your interest is. The basic membership has always been very inexpensive and easy to jump into. Actually, all the memberships are pretty economical, but if you want to take it to a higher level, I would even get in at the Trustee Network or maybe the Sovereign membership. You're going to be able to join us on live Zoom calls. You're going to be able to get into a lot of course material, and even for the highest tier, you can even get monthly one-on-ones with me Of course, there's always consultations if you have very specific scenarios and you're just not sure how to approach your specific scenario and you want to meet with me or another team member one-on-one, let's do it. I'm happy to talk you through it. I'm happy to give you a strategy or help you to create your own strategy. That would be a better way to explain it. So feel free to jump in, but there's always a path forward. Okay. I'm the kind of guy, and I think this has probably resonated with a lot of people. I'm an action guy. I'm not just about talking theory. Yes, we need to understand these concepts. Yes, we need to learn the principles, of course, but I would characterize myself as someone who always values action. And I'm even willing to take some action, a lot of action imperfectly, even if I'm not really sure, or I know I might make some mistakes, or, I'm always acting as thorough as I can. I'm not, skipping something when I know I shouldn't. But I'm often taking action even if I don't necessarily have 100% confidence, right? Maybe 80%, maybe I'm 50 to 80% there, and I'm just, I'm willing to take some action. So I know not everybody's like that, but if you are someone that's kind of tired of just hearing a lot of theory and wants to actually get some real results in your life, as far as generating more freedom from getting out from under the yoke of the public, all these obligations, and, vibing at a higher level, and frankly, unlocking your true purpose in life so that you can achieve greatness as it pertains to whatever you're here to do, then the Freedom Studio is probably as good a bet as any of a private education organization to get involved with. So if that resonates with you at all, I'd love to have you here with us at Network. We've got a great, thriving community. We've been around. We did rebrand about a year ago, but we've been around as an organization for about 18 months plus, and we're not going anywhere, folks. We're not going anywhere. Well, we are going. We're going a lot of places. We're not going away, but we're going up. Okay, we're going to grow. My goal is to make this one of the largest private education organizations in the world with a worldwide scope, and we want to help a lot of people. So if you deem that you may be someone that wants to get involved, then we'd love to have you. I'd love to have you. I'd love to be able to meet you. I'd love to be able to see you in one of our events or one of our study sessions and hear your story and kind of what you've been dealing with, and see if we can't give you some great next level advice to take it to the next level. Okay? But just remember, anything at all they send you from the public, any public presentment at all, may be discharged, may be accepted in return for discharge. That's the most important thing I want you to take away from this video. Acceptance. Okay? Just accept it and return it. Your signature pays for the obligation. You just got to learn how to do it from a mechanical perspective and how to stand on that if someone comes along and tries to challenge what you're doing. Okay? So I hope to see you in Network. Thank you very much. Thank you for sticking with me all the way through the video. I appreciate you very much, and I'll talk to you soon.